What up, family? Welcome to or welcome back to Colonial Outcasts. We're like a non-cucked version of the Navy SEALs. Thanks to Greg, we now operate on sea and land, but instead of taking orders from old cowardly men on Wall Street, we subvert their plans for the sake of humanity and the increasingly repressed working class of the world. We're joined by co-founder and co-host Greg Stoker, former Army Ranger, currently on the Sumud Flotilla as the leader of the veterans boat. Also joined by Molombo Thillot, who is a Congolese-American artist, activist, and creator based in Los Angeles. He is a creator of Zairoo. Am I saying that right? Zairoo?
Zairoo, yeah.
Zairoo, a groundbreaking project that weaves African mythology and the Black diaspora. He holds degrees in sociology, ethnic studies from CU Boulder, and a master's in legal studies from Loyola. Sorry, I'm bad today with pronunciation. Loyola Law School, Los Angeles. My bad, bro. We also have Jessica Burbank. She's an investigative journalist and content creator. I'm a huge fan. Her recent documentary exposes how Flock, a mass surveillance company, secures local government contracts behind closed doors. Jessica's work focuses on demystifying the economic narrative told by the 1%. It's perfect segue into what we're going to be talking about. So first, Greg, the Global Sumud Flotilla is now within 100 nautical miles of Gaza, putting it in the high-risk zone of interception by the Israelis. The attempts at branding the flotilla as an armada of terror is failing miserably, as visibility of the humanitarians on board has only increased by the day thanks to your social media repost, along with global support after Italian working-class citizens took to the streets to pressure their out-of-touch government to step in. Spain and Greece have offered backup escorts. Are you seeing those escorts yet, visibly?
Yeah, they come and go. The Italian ships are inherently problematic, as to be expected from their government. The Spanish vessel is supposed to link up us tomorrow, but we'll stop at the red line, our predicted interdiction zone, and just wait and see. We also, the Turkish ship, basically evacuated a boat that was taking on water and passed off the crew to the Red Crescent, and they're no longer part of the mission. And we do have a Turkish drone circling the formation to keep eyes on. But of course, this was just basically just basically has the pretense of trying to uphold international maritime law and freedom of navigation. But we're still very much on our own.
Right.
However, it does have a lot of important things happening behind the scenes, which we can get into. But that's kind of how it stands right now. So we are basically longitudinally north of Port Said in Egypt, and we expect to pass into the red zone here around 4 a.m. local time. At time of recording, it is 9 p.m. Gaza time.
Got it. Jessica and Molombo, sorry to shove you in the room here last minute and throw you in the chaos, but thanks for joining us. We're gonna probably talk about, besides what's happening to the flotilla, we'll talk about this UN non-solution that's coming down the pipeline. I'm sure y'all have been on top of it more than I have, but I want to get into questions that y'all might have about the flotilla. I know you guys have been tracking it and doing your part in posting about it online. I really appreciate your work, Jessica, and keeping eyes on it.
All right, I'll start, Greg. What are you expecting in the next few days? We've seen the other flotillas be intercepted by the IDF. We've seen people on the flotillas get arrested, some brutalized by the IDF. Now, you've got the naval forces from all of these different nations, Turkey, Italy, you've got Spain and Greece there. What's the move when they try and intercept you all? Are they going to step in and try and prevent that to get the aid through?
No, they're basically operating now in a search and rescue capacity. They will not intervene militarily. I know, of course, that's an unreasonable expectation, and I know a lot of people are disappointed by that. But one thing that's been interesting throughout this entire saga over the past month was that, this flotilla, this kind of grassroots free association of civilian aid efforts has kind of done something unprecedented. I've been paying a lot of attention to Western media and CNN, and there's kind of this epistemological, idea within the establishment media that, activist movements can't really move geopolitics at all. What moves geopolitics is states and forums like the UN, Davos, the G7. But we've somehow managed, in a very small part, been able to do that. Because activist movements, in their estimation, are like, Occupy Wall Street, things like that implode on themselves, or just like, pretty effective but small time like grassroots movements like Code Pink. But we've managed to, through parallel actions, with the Italian labor unions, been able to pressure governments in order to take a stance and really do things that aren't necessarily like confrontational, but put them in conflict with the Israeli government. As a political piece within the context of Palestine, Europe is still very much in play, at least certain states like France, Spain, Italy, Greece. Obviously, Germany is not part of that, maybe even the Nordic bloc. The U.S. will support Israel forever, unconditionally. I don't see any reason to suspect that they won't. Will keep, being chained and anchor down into the depths. What we see now, a sort of mobilization or an inflection point with how some states are viewing their relationship with Israel within the European continent. And, this flotilla has just been, one more step in moving the ball forward a little bit. So I think that no matter what happens, we've had some measure of success. And, through this flotilla, some states or some governments have been able to kind of start feeling their way into like regaining some sort of legitimacy in terms of like soft power, and also maybe talking to some MPs within these governments. We have MPs attached to the flotilla throughout the boats that they kind of see this as the beginning of an opportunity to start not acting like vassals to U.S. foreign policy and imperium going forward. So a lot of interesting things are happening, I would say, as a result of this. No matter what the imputation scenario looks like, I think it's already been a success. We obviously won the war against the diaspora, which was taking point at the flotilla start. So we're very proud of what we've done. It's been an absolute shit show behind the scenes. It's absolutely absurd. I can't wait to get off this boat. I can't wait to go to prison. But like, we're almost there, baby.
Yeah, I think the IDF already is trying to jam your cell phone signal, but it doesn't matter. It's Greg Stoker. His signal is going to go through no matter what. So hopefully we'll fix that in post. Molombo, you first became aware of Greg Stoker because of the Sumud Flotilla. Tell me how that like influenced your attention to the matter and how you've been tracking it. Any questions you have for Greg?
I think his statement of positivity kind of segues into like my question perfectly. Really just a question of morale. I'm hearing from everything from Palestine's recognition of statehood to this quote unquote blue and white wall flotilla that's allegedly coming to intercept you guys. How has this affected morale? I can't believe it, because like the only thing I'm seeing on Twitter is this obviously AI photoshopped image of what is the original flotilla. But yeah, overall, how is morale within the flotilla? Has the recognition of Palestinian statehood affected conversation? Had any changes in terms of, you mentioned the Turkish drones, but has it any effect in terms of outside help at all?
Well, first, I mean, morale is we've been on this boat for a month. Where everyone's like grumpy and ready to get it done. But in terms of like we were very pleased to watch from afar Netanyahu's reception at the UN. We do think that I think that everyone knows that this new Palestinian state 2021 point solution is poison pilled from the get go. Obviously, I won't have time to get into that. You guys will. But what I really love about the counter protest, the counter flotilla of pro-famine activists. Never thought I'd say those words, but I guess it's 2025, and who knows what's going on these days. They're actually not coming to confront us. We will already be arrested by the time they sail. So what they're going to do is they're going to parade a blue and white flotilla in front of the U.S. embassy, who apparently has a sea view, and be like, release the hostages. It'll be better for everybody. So all the accusations of us being performative activists, like that is peak performative activists. And it's also great because it's a bunch of yachts. Like the Israeli Yacht Association is getting involved in this protest, and they're the ones like wanting to deny the humanitarian aid that we're bringing. And we're a bunch of ramshackle ancient sea hulks, cobbled together over the past 2 months. So like if you could, and they're defending a genocide in a settler colonial state. So if you could kind of encapsulate or set an example of like a transnational class struggle by these two different flotilla and counter flotillas, I can't think of a better example.
The class distinction at the end there is definitely perfect. I had no idea a yacht association was involved. Wow.
Yeah, pulling out the big yachts. So.
Is the Israeli Yacht Association based somewhere near Manhattan?
I mean, I'm pretty sure it could be out of the Brooklyn dock.
I think we got
Brooklyn.
that. I heard Brooklyn. I did hear Brooklyn.
Right, okay.
They're in
Okay,
Brooklyn. I'm just going to say that right now. They're in Brooklyn.
Yeah. So if I'm breaking it too bad, I don't want to creep your style. I want to get into the UN stuff, and I have not had the capacity to really check it out or look at it. So we're basically just going to keep on sailing, and they're going to do whatever they do. They've definitely seemed to have a media consensus because they telegraphed generally what they're going to do, that we're going to look at interdiction. Now, I will say this in parting, that the Israeli Navy is very small. It's like the 49th smallest in the world. They only have like 60 ships. 5 of them are submarines. One of the patrol detachments is actually dedicated out of the port of Eilat. So they're in the Red Sea and won't even be part of this action. They want 12 ships and maybe one of their missile frigates to do this. But they've never done anything like this before. So it could get pretty hairy, logistically, potentially violent. And, if they do it at night, like night operations, large scale night operations, especially at sea, like we're supposed to have 1.5 meter swells tomorrow, but it's going to be a mess. So hoping for the best, expecting an absolute shit show. And we're going to keep pushing forward.
What's the conjecture of what type of maneuvers they'll take? Or do you think that they're going to use some of their bigger ships to kind of corral the flotilla, or do you think they'll deputize a bunch of small boats to kind of like board each ship, arrest everybody, or put a sentry on each ship and then wait for the bigger ship to come by and collect y'all?
What we've heard and what I think is the most likely outcome is that they will send out, fire teams on Zodiac lifeboats to board the ships. Like we're on a 14-meter sailboat, so they only need a small fire team. Get everybody off the boat. And then scuttle the ship. We think they'll take the motorboats, like the larger, like ancient yachts that we have as command ships, into Ashdod, but everything else are going to sink.
Yeah, is that because that's what they did last time, right? Based on precedents?
No, they've never done any of this. This is why the threat assessment has been so annoying, because I don't really have a lot of precedent to go off of, and neither do they. So this is why we're kind of like, this could be an absolute catastrophe. So we will. Yeah. So anyways, guys, that is the update. Sorry I can't stick around longer, but it was great meeting y'all. And thanks so much for coming on to our podcast.
Thank you, Greg.
All right, brother.
Thank you, Greg.
Don't stress me out too much, dude.
All right. I'll keep you updated with very alarmist texts throughout the night. Cheers.
Oh, thanks. I could use them. Jesus Christ. That guy stresses me the fuck out every fucking day. Anyways.
That was intense.
Okay. Yeah, so with that being said, I wanted to go into, meanwhile, in the backdrop, what's happening with the UN, their non-solution. Jessica, you've been on top of this. Could you give the audience a little quick play-by-play summary synopsis of what this, clown and pony show that the UN is trying to pull?
Yeah. Yeah, so we just saw the General Assembly meet. They just concluded like 7 days of meeting. I think, was it on Friday? So we've seen the United Nations repeatedly have their Security Council put forward these resolutions for a ceasefire, which the United States always vetoes. They say things like, we believe the ceasefire resolution legitimizes Hamas and weird things like that. And it can be just because Hamas in the resolution is recognized as having some kind of authority in the region, which clearly they do. That does not mean that like we're going to put Hamas in charge and have a two-state solution and recognize Palestine. You have Netanyahu saying there will be no Palestinian state west of the Jordan River. All of these things, it's like, why are we still doing Security Council resolutions for a ceasefire when we know every single time the United States is going to veto the resolution? It's ridiculous. And simultaneously, in the same breath that the U.S. says, no, we can't legitimize Hamas, they say things like we need to get aid into Gaza and we don't support people dying, which is absurd. And then, of course, we have recently this vote by the United Nations member nations saying they would like to recognize the Palestinian state. Now, the U.S. just goes off and says things like, oh, well, we just disagree with that, which is ridiculous. But it's a significant step, right, to see people like President Macron give these speeches about what's happening in Palestine and actually speak to the blockade and speak to the starvation in a way that we haven't seen like allied nations speak to in detail before. But still, without an army, what is the UN going to actually do? Are they going to show up there and be like, yeah, we're establishing a border for Palestine right here? I just think that in terms of staying power, with the United States being so vehemently behind the state of Israel, we're not going to see a Palestinian state be established.
No, and that's why I give such little credence and optimism whenever the UN comes out and signals that it's going to recognize Palestine as a state, because it's kind of like, after all this time, after 2 years, when the genocide is just about completed with this final solution, now they come out and want to recognize Palestine as a state, as a little platitude. And I personally have been making a point in the past year that it is the platitudes that are the most dangerous, not the very obvious mask off vehement, rhetoric coming out of, like, say, the neocons and the neolibs about, eradicating Palestinians off their land. And like, I would rather all these leaders talk like Benjamin Netanyahu and Ben-Gvir rather than give these platitudes at a time where it's too late, because then it just gives false hope and it doesn't signal to the international public what their true intentions are, which is why I hate platitudes. I find them to be way more cynical and way more sinister than anything else. But yeah, Molombo, what are your thoughts? You have a lot of knowledge about these types of actions throughout, the African continent, and what the UN does in these situations to offer these types of platitudes and candy coat everything.
In terms of sugar-coated promises that don't really lead to actual action. The UN isn't going to send troops or peacekeepers over to Palestine to stop the genocide. And even if they did, what would happen? UN peacekeepers are sent to the Congo all the time. What do they do besides just protect U.S. interests or just hang around U.S. military bases and just give out food to both the rebels and the average refugee that just needs a place to stay, but no permanent location anymore. And when we think about the UN, when we take a dialectical perspective of what the UN's role and capacities is very much limited by the US. The US has complete control of their Security Council, has complete control over most of its diplomatic maneuvers. Without the US support, almost every resolution is doomed to fail. So just echoing Jessica's statements and presumptions. But I guess another perspective to take would really be how bad is the external pressure in terms of because this has been happening for over 2 years now, the genocide, and it really tells you how bad the external pressures are for this widespread recognitions to happen about Palestine. But at the same time, Macron is still dealing with the controversy of electing a prime minister the French people didn't vote for. Donald Trump essentially outlawed anything left of liberal in America. It's like we're most of the like this whole recognition of statehood shouldn't blind people to the fact that we're very much still veering over to a lot of fascistic thought process and a lot of internal structures in Western countries. So what are they saying behind closed doors where they're like, wait, we can't be too bad this way, but we could ignore everything else?
It literally feels like the complete and public marriage of neoliberalism and neoconservatism. Like fascism and neoliberalism are completely joining themselves in holy matrimony in front of the public. And the way I see the UN in this whole situation is, I think this is the plan. I think this is the plan from the get-go. I think that all of these concessions, public concessions, these platitudes were all planned out 2 years prior when this whole thing started. They knew what the goal was in Gaza. That was to clear out everybody who lived there, the indigenous people of the Palestinians, for real estate. It's all about real estate. It all comes down to real estate and trade. So the way I see the UN, the UN is essentially acting as a corporate PR firm to the international public to sell them on the plans of big development companies for Gaza, and with the veneer of future prosperity for the Palestinians. This was the plan all along. This is why the UN waited 2 years before it started officially calling it a genocide. And this just confirms the suspicion that the world is ultimately ran by a transnational capitalist class of elite businessmen. It confirms the two-tier theory that you have an international class of ultra-wealthy disguising themselves as representatives for their nation's interests, but their loyalty is actually to the country club of capital that most of us will never benefit from. And I guess their signal to the public and their plans that they have made, very obvious to everybody, has gone overlooked though in this whole discussion with the UN. I'm going to share my screen here real quick. This is ultimately the master plan. This was developed by the Boston Consulting Group. So I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Boston Consulting Group. Yeah, but this is put out by so the Boston Consulting Group is kind of one of the big players, and that's who I want to talk about, are the players behind this whole plan that I believe was definitely put together 2 years ago. So they're like the neoliberal titans of gentrification. So they promote high-end premium development models. So they're like advisors, and they play in like a leadership role to encourage developers to pursue luxury, high-margin housing that could shift political allocation towards a higher end real estate, exasperating inequality. So they're the gentrifiers. They're the think tanks behind gentrification. But in this case, it's on an international scale. So they were the ones that put together this plan. And this is the plan that Trump is toting. And it's interesting, the wording, from a demolished Iranian proxy to a prosperous Abrahamic ally. So they obviously put that wording in there to appeal to like the Christian base in the United States.
Islam is Abrahamic. What? Am I crazy? Am I wrong on that? Am I crazy?
No, you're not crazy. But with the 5th grade level of education that most American adults have, hey, it plays. You can keep that fact under wraps until, of course, they hit the pro-Palestinian social media post. So this is kind of like a quick overlay of what their plans are. The Great Trust, the Gaza Reconstitution, Economic Acceleration and Transformation. Great. So that's the acronym. Well, Trust will fundamentally transform Gaza. Spatial design, economy, governance, integrated into the Abrahamic
sorry.
fabric.
The acronym is Marvel villain. Is Marvel villain level. Keep going. I'm sorry.
You can't make this up. No, this is like the Avengers 2.0. I don't know. So a U.S.-led multilateral custodianship, so leading to a reformed Palestinian self-governance. It can start as a U.S.-Israel bilateral agreement, taking control from Israel to the U.S. once Hamas is disarmed, and evolve to a formal multilateral trusteeship. So, Jessica, based on what you've researched, and you do excellent journalism, by the way, and you do package them up into great clips on social media. Can you talk more in line with like the disaster capitalism behind this, and why it's why it's being sold the way it is by the UN, because in my opinion, like the UN is completely complicit in this plan. It's like as if they were given the plans for this 2 years ago and they were timing their platitudes to the public and their calls for peace and their calls for redevelopment like almost to the second.
It's weird. I feel like we're seeing like a transition from like people call it an anarchy of nation states, right? That's our global order. And that's what the United Nations is trying to like bring coordination among, is this anarchy of states. It feels like we're changing from like the nation state to the trust fund state. Like this is about to be the first trust fund state, where rather than like central banks and a central form of governance dictating what happens in a society, central banks are losing their power. The IMF and World Bank are losing their power, and private capital is now the central power in the world. And so I think like we're seeing a reorganization of power rather than governments of nation states. It's these groups that control and direct capital. And this is the prime example of that. When I was looking into like what the motivations of the United States supporting the escalation of conflict after October 7th could be, I first learned about the Gurion Canal, which, named after Ben Gurion. It's supposed to excavate with the use of nuclear weapons. There was a U.S. Department of Energy plan in the 50s for this, to just nuke the Negev desert to create a canal between the Red Sea and the Mediterranean Sea that the U.S. could control for trade. So we're in a state where we know that no one is going to discipline these guys, these people with all of this capital that are willing to do whatever they want to use the world to accumulate more capital and more power. To what end? I guess that's the big question now. And I'm afraid to find out, but it feels like we're finding out. Like they have so much power that the only way we would ever challenge them is if everyone decides to stop using the money they use.
Yeah, that's the thing, is that because this is like the misconception about this genocide is that this is all Israel going rogue, right? This is just Israel going rogue and doing its thing, and everybody else is sitting back in horror, when in fact this is a multinational cooperative effort. And the way I've always framed this whole thing with Israel is that it is the mercenary of the ruling class. They are simply doing the dirty work because they've already branded themselves as that rogue state. So actors, internationally can just sit back and just put the blame on Benjamin Netanyahu instead of acknowledging the fact that they are active investors in this genocide. And I would like to point out the role that Saudi Arabia is playing in all this. And this goes back to the actors who are involved in the potential development of this great trust project. So like I said, the Boston Consulting Group, they are like I said, they are the neoliberal titans of gentrification. Like their specialty is going into areas that are considered of lower value, and then drafting a plan to big developers saying, hey, this area that's poor, we can make it an area of luxury development. So that's their specialty. That's their think tank model. And next you have the El Ad Group. So the El Ad Group is an Israeli U.S. investment company operations. It's a firm that is controlled by an Israeli billionaire Yitzhak Tsuva, and it works across U.S. and Canada, and it specializes in high value markets. So its business model includes acquisition of land, development, restoration, conversion of landmark buildings, owning commercial portfolios, and residential development. So they're very big on like New York City luxury development projects. So they will buy land in New York City that was, for pennies on the dollar, and then develop it into high luxury condominiums, office buildings, whatever. They're poised to be a huge actor in the redevelopment of Gaza. But the part that I feel goes under the radar, that is hardly ever mentioned, is Saudi Arabia's investment into this genocide. So I don't know if y'all remember the statement that Jared Kushner made a year and a half ago, I believe, where he made a very, very casual comment that, we just need to, it's very unfortunate what's happening in Gaza, but we just need to move these people out, and it's prime real estate, coastal property, Well, that statement, while it was never an official policy or an official indication for affinity partners, it reflects on what their intentions are and who's involved and who's going to be involved in the redevelopment. So Affinity Partners is heavily invested by Saudi Arabia with the PIF. In fact, they're considered the largest backer of Affinity Partners. So PIF, of course, is owned by the Saudi Crown Royal Prince. And so the I guess the framing of this that we've been given is that Israel being this rogue actor, just committing this massacre against Palestinians because they don't feel safe or whatever. And it's taken up the space of all the conversations and the rhetoric and the debates. And I believe that that's intentional to mask the fact that this is an international cooperative effort, So I just wanted to know what your opinions would be. Like, do you feel like the public needs to be more privy to the international cooperations with the genocide, as opposed to us simply framing this as Netanyahu going rogue and being this insane man that nobody can control?
Yeah, I think that's such a good point. Right before I came on, I saw a quote tweet of something. I think it was a Hassan Piker stream clip, which I don't even know what he said because the quote tweet just pissed me off so much. I knew it wasn't even worth watching. But it was basically like, what a miscategorization, what horrible framing to say that the problem is Israel. Most Americans like Israel. We have to say the problem's Netanyahu because that's something Americans can understand. They have a positive view of Israel as an ally. And I hate the assumption that the general public in the United States is too stupid to learn something. They might not know things because of the quality of education in America right now, but that doesn't mean that it's impossible to teach them about what's happening in the world and their ability to understand what's going on if you tell them. Like, if you show Americans this on nightly cable news, they would be outraged, but there's an unwillingness to do that because it's corporate controlled, of course. And so that's sort of how I see it. We need to just tell the full truth, the whole truth, and people can understand it. There is no need to say Netanyahu is the only problem. Israel, as you said, has sort of been this rogue, convenient proxy state, almost like, a militia for the ruling class of the entire world. And like, there's been this backlash of, well, are you saying that there's a Jewish cabal running the world? That's anti-Semitic. And it's like, no one said anything about Judaism. Israel cannot say that they represent all Jewish people, and many Jewish people say it's against the religion and culture to do what Netanyahu and what Israel has been doing and what the U.S. has been doing with them. And so they've made it culturally impossible to give this criticism in a meaningful way. But like, alternate media like this is good. It's worth us trying.
I think it's been very effective. Like, I know for a fact that your videos alone have wakened up a lot of people, especially on the liberal side, because you do have a way of speaking in such a manner that liberals can come over to the side of like class consciousness. So you've been that bridge, and it's been not my forte in speaking to liberals. I just don't have that ability. So that's one of the values I see in the videos you've been putting out, is the dangers of neoliberalism and how it has been used to, I guess, mask the true sinister nature of these business deals and the exploitation of, Palestinians along and across the world. Now, Molombo, based on what you've seen, or what you've learned about the actions of like these types of neoliberal platitudes given by the UN throughout the African continent, how do you think this will play out on the world stage as far as the public sentiments about this? I mean, granted, the actions that have happened in the African continent, a lot of them went under the radar with the public because of the fact that there was not a spotlight on Africa, and we didn't have social media, platforming what was happening. So how do you think that this is going to change in relation to the African continent? Because we're going to be seeing similar attempts to African populations, such as in the Sudan.
No, 100%. But before we go too off topic, I definitely want to echo the sentiments of Netanyahu being used as a scapegoat of whatever's going on with Israel. It definitely does seem, from my perspective, that seems the most liberal, artificial propaganda I've ever seen, of essentially just always trying to blame everything on Netanyahu, whereas it's much more popular to blame everything on AIPAC and Israel. AIPAC, especially within a lot of right-wing discourse, and especially Israel. I feel it's very much a no-brainer. I only really see within very certain sects of liberal conversation where it's all Netanyahu's fault. It's all Netanyahu's fault. I think in a very surprising way, it's just not popular to blame everything on just one man. The crisis is too large for that. I feel like and I don't know, it's a poor script. Nobody calls Nazis the Hitlers. They call them Nazis.
Right.
It's hard to do it's hard to do one man theory on atrocity. Sometimes you have to blame the group of people participating within it, who's funding it, and all the bad actors within it. But to just your point in terms of Africa, I think an interesting situation occurs here with Africa, where everybody's eyes is on Israel or Ukraine and Russia. And you come to one of the contradictions of capitalism of having over 600 military bases, over 800 military bases across the world, with about 200 of them being in Africa, 100 of them with actual names and ownership on top of them. It's really expensive to have military bases, guys. And to constantly fund them, to constantly feed the people that are within them, and nothing is a bigger example of how much of a cost some fallacy that is than Burkina Faso. Ibn Traore even made a statement like as early as yesterday that we have to send more eyes onto the Congo, and the fact that this man is still alive and breathing while creating the most amazing socialist funded organizations, socialist minded school programs. He just made school programs from ages 5 to 12 completely free for the population, while still disavowing capitalism within every speech he has. It's just amazing. He hasn't evoked Thomas Sankara yet out in public because he's still smart. But the fact that the Alliance of Sahel States is still ongoing with very little military intervention by the U.S. I think the last aggressive military maneuver by the United States was the statement by six-star general. I'm blanking on his name.
The head of AFRICOM. I forgot his name too.
Was he actually the head of? Wow, that's crazy. The actual head of AFRICOM. And his recent statement saying that Mali, Niger, Burkina Faso have no need for a military, which is just insane. Dialectical. No, you guys don't need a military. We'll protect you. I'm like, okay, from what? From you? Crazy. I guess from the African perspective, what's going on in terms of international perspective is America and UN by extension has never felt, how do I word this? Has never felt more or less of a world police until this era. Yeah, like the boot has never felt less heavy on the neck. I know there's probably different ways to word this, but Africa is definitely thriving over the era of Ibrahim Traore, and there's massive solidarity around it. Joseph Kabila just got sentenced to death today. I don't think anything's going to happen. He took a trip to Roma, so they made the sentencing based off his absence, because up until now he was just holed up in Joseph Kabila City, and they had no ways of really reaching him. Goma's still occupied right now. Goma's been occupied for months now, and we've had UN peacekeepers for years. Just to let you guys know that UN peacekeepers don't do anything. But yeah, that's that ramshackle update. What's going on in Africa? In terms of revolutionary fervor, it's never been higher. In terms of Pan-African solidarity, has never felt more unified. When you have everybody from Egypt, from Egyptians, Cameroonians, to Congolese, to Zimbabweans, to people from Madagascar, especially with the uprising Madagascar that happened recently, they all say one common name, one common word, and it's always Traore.
Yeah, and the reason why I feel so keen on connecting the two when it comes to Gaza and Africa is, like, on one hand, you have Africa experiencing, at the very least, a cultural revolution and a change of mindset of being exploited and, breaking the shackles of European, corporate dominance and exploitation of the resources. And on the Gaza side, you have a genocide that has gone through unfettered, unhindered by anybody, by any major players, and they're trying to attempt this, this liberal branding of the UN's solution. And the way I see it is like the UN is trying to sell this peace plan, and it has so many holes in it. It has so many contradictory elements to the Palestinian people. And that's what I kind of want to get into a little bit of why we have to use take lessons from the revolutionary energy we're seeing in the African continent and apply it for the Palestinians so that they don't get exploited, because we do have power to stop whatever the UN is going to apologize for as companies move in. So obviously, Jessica, the biggest thing is the disarmament of Hamas, right? They want Hamas disarmed. Well, that essentially leads to non-autonomy by the Palestinian people, because Hamas is the only active fighting militia within Palestine, mostly. And we saw what happened to, Sabra, the Sabra village when they disarmed. So tell me why that alone is a complete shackle on the Palestinian people. Like, it essentially gives them no autonomy. It means that, like, any aggressive actions towards Palestinian civilians, there'll be no repercussions. There'll be no ability to fight back.
Yeah, I mean, it's so hard to explain this in a way that people will understand and, like, overcome the bias that's been ingrained in them in terms of Hamas. And I say that because, like, my audience is really a lot of people who are regular working people, who are maybe liberal leaning, who are conservative leaning, kind of centrist, that believe Hamas is this unbelievable terrorist force and can't imagine it being anything else. But let's speak about this in terms of the United States. Let's say, the United Nations got together and every single nation besides the United States said the U.S. has overextended its military force around the world. They have put military bases in too many places, and the United Nations has decided that the only thing we can do to fix this is to get rid of the United States military altogether. You guys can't have a military anymore. You have misbehaved. We're going to take it away. I think many Americans would understand that that's removing the autonomy of the United States as a country. And they would say that that's crazy, that if you don't have an army, you can't protect yourself. You don't have your autonomy. And so why do we say Israel has a right to defend itself, but we're okay with the disarmament of Palestine? It's ridiculous. Also, it's not just like we have to disarm Hamas. A part of this plan has been saying the Palestinian Authority will be in charge. And so now you're telling people which political faction will govern their country, rather than saying, we're going to hold elections, we're going to help you out, we're going to support you, they're going to be done by Palestinian people, but we're going to, help you facilitate them by providing, the necessary ballot boxes and infrastructure to make an election happen. And we're going to have our best non-biased election watchers come. That's not what they're doing. They're saying we're handpicking which political party will be in charge of your country. That's insane. That's not giving Palestinians any kind of autonomy. It's really ridiculous. And I don't think that there's any hope in Palestinian autonomy if this plan goes through.
Well, and to the uninitiated, when people who are not too privy to the geopolitics of that region, people hear the word Palestinian Authority, they're like, oh, well, that means that the Palestinians have authority. without knowing the fact that, and it's such a bad moniker, Palestinian Authority, because it's essentially just a surrogate for the Israeli government. In fact, one of the most insane things I heard about Mahmoud Abbas recently was that he actually went to Lebanon to ask the Lebanese government to disarm Palestinian refugee camps. Like the ultimate betrayal. Like that's literally, that would be like Donald Trump going into, I don't know, like some military base in South Korea and asking the South Korean government to kick out and take away all the arms of the U.S. military bases. Like, how would Americans feel about that? You know, I mean, like, so imagine that, like, where you have refugees where their only means of protecting themselves are keeping an enclave within Lebanon, given the genocides and massacres that have happened in southern Lebanon by the Israelis. And actually your leader going into that country and begging the government to disarm your own people. So if anybody has any doubts about what the Palestinian Authority is, like, there you go. It's a surrogate for the Israeli government.
Also, not to mention, hasn't been in power in Gaza. They've mostly been in the West Bank.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
to take the Palestinian Authority and say you're in charge of Gaza now, it makes absolutely no sense. Sorry, Molombo, go ahead.
No, not at all. I was just going to make it. This sounds very similar to the situation within Venezuela, having an outside force choose your political leaders.
Yeah, and that's kind of been the gimmick, I guess, internationally, that they hope kind of just goes right over the heads of the international public. The international public hears the word Palestinian Authority, or they will say, hey, don't worry, there's going to be a self-determination, and the installed government will be nothing more than a proxy for Western governments. But because the public, at least they perceive the public as being so uneducated, they think that the public will just accept it and take that as a win, you know, like, oh, okay, we're making progress. So it's been a constant frustration, but I do feel like the tides are turning. I feel like because of like this massive social media, you know, movement to educate people like yourselves, you know, Molombo and Jessica, I believe that just doesn't work anymore. But the question then arises, okay, well then what does the world do about it? Like, what does the world do about the UN trying to pull a fast one over everybody? Like, is there an action that we all can take to prevent this from being some candy-coated steamroll?
Okay, I will say, because we've seen it recently work very well, the firing of Jimmy Kimmel, right? We don't love Jimmy Kimmel. But we saw the response be, we're going to cancel our Disney and Hulu subscriptions. And it was something that, like, weirdly centrists who enjoy Jimmy Kimmel and leftists who enjoy free speech were united on. Because, like, if Jimmy Kimmel is too extreme, we've lost our ability to talk about everything, which maybe we have with the recent laws. But totally we've seen the networks go on their heels because the one thing they understand is money, actually. And so who else does Boston Consulting Group work with? What sorts of businesses and corporations are working with Boston Consulting Group? Who do we know who works at Boston Consulting Group? These are like real human decision makers who are passing this down and making these PowerPoints. And we should know who they are. They should be publicly accountable for what they're doing. And we should genuinely boycott every single business that is working with Boston Consulting Group to send a message and tell them that that's why we're boycotting them, to make it super clear. Like, it worked within days with Disney and with Nexstar and with Sinclair. And so I really think, like, it sounds cheesy, but I feel like it's all we have left, genuinely. These people have no shame. They only understand money.
Yeah. Molombo, what do you got?
Sorry, you kept saying Boston Consulting Group, and I was like, at this point, my brain's cooked. I gotta see what they're going on. I'm looking at the Boston Consulting Group alumni page right now, and lo and behold, you cannot find out who they work with. This is very private. It's actually quite crazy. This is one of those deep dives you're really gonna have to do. But in terms of what can be done in terms of messaging, I think, you can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. We saw exactly what happened with Nick Fuentes, kind of trying to pivot around the question over, especially after Kurt's death, the question over AIPAC or Israel's involvement. I'm not putting any sauce into that conspiracy theory, but you see his own followers still they're not letting go. They're not letting go of the rhetoric. They still see they still think America first. They still see, sure, they don't have the same dialectical materialist analysis of the situation. Definitely coded more anti-Semitic versus class distinctions, but there's still this underlying idea that AIPAC and Israel do not have the best interests of Americans at heart. Why are taxes going to a foreign nation? And I'm seeing this having reverberations within the right and within leftists as well. I don't think, no matter how much Oracle buys TikTok for, even though it was, I think, announced a couple of days ago that they can't really do anything much to the algorithm. The algorithm is how it is. Yeah, they own TikTok, but the algorithm is just going to stay the algorithm. But yeah, no matter how much of Israel, no matter how many TikTok share Israel buys or Israel founded company buys, the toothpaste isn't going back into the bottle. People are very much, I believe in better angels, and I believe that a good amount of people are well aware of the atrocities going on around Israel. I think it would be insurmountably costly of a propaganda run to try to change people's minds at this point in time. You can't make people unforget the death of over like 100,000 of children. I don't think that, I just don't see that as feasible. There's no precedent in that in human history. So yeah, I believe in better angels. I believe what we're doing in terms of raising awareness is only going to keep pushing the landslide even further. Yeah, sorry if I'm an optimist, guys. I think
no, I am too. I am too. I agree with that. I think that optimism is the only choice we have. Like, we don't have a choice, because the alternative is we just, lay over in doom and gloom and not see any opportunities for action. So at the point that I'm at, it's like there is no other option besides optimism, because anything else is just going to lead to non-action and defeatism. So even if the skies are looking dark and murky, I don't care. We have to find the chinks in the armor. And I want to point out. Yeah, go ahead.
I just found that Boston Consulting Group has a statement on their website distancing themselves from this work. They said 2 partners initiated work on this project without permission from Boston Consulting Group. They don't name the 2 partners, but they've said that we have not accepted any payment for this work, and they didn't have permission, and were actually told not to pursue it. And they disavow that these partners at Boston Consulting Group took on this work. So they've already received enough negative backlash that they're saying this wasn't us, guys.
Yeah, I read that. Obviously, it's an indicator. It's an indicator of like at least some PR pressure. But consulting groups are like a dime a dozen, right? Like their goal was to develop the plans, to develop the logistics, to kind of sort through all the investors and be like, all right, buddy, you're going to go here and you're going to develop the water treatment facilities. You're going to develop the golf courses. You'll develop the beachfront properties. And then here's how all this is going to work. And here's who's going to benefit from it. So, and I just want to point out about AIPAC, going back to AIPAC, me and Greg always try to push this point, always, whenever AIPAC gets brought up. I think that AIPAC is a sacrificial lamb for lobbying groups. I believe that the reason why we've seen so much conversation about AIPAC is to mask the biggest lobbying group that benefits the most from the development of Gaza, which is the National Association of Realtors. That is the largest, that is the most powerful lobbying group in the United States. AIPAC, I believe, now don't get me wrong, AIPAC is a huge influencer, and they pay a lot of money to politicians, but the money that they pay to politicians, $200,000 there, $50,000 here. It's kind of chump change when you think about it. It's nice to have some
cash.
Okay
there.
Yeah, okay there. I mean, don't get me wrong. Those are big numbers for us, peasants you know. But for politicians, that's nothing. The real money is in the stock dividends that our politicians have that they're looking forward to. That's the big harvest. The lobbying money is more or less a temporary spending cash. It's like your little walk around money until that big harvest day comes. So the reason why I want to make that point about the fact that the National Association of Realtors is the largest lobbying group is because that the investors surrounding that lobbying group and who they represent are going to be the biggest profiteers off of the genocide, because the same development companies that have been buying up single family homes across the United States, contributing to the fact that there's like 17 million vacant homes in the United States with almost well over 1 million people who are homeless. It's all connected to Gaza because those same companies will be making bank when the Palestinians are ethnically cleansed and when they'll be developing things. So the reason why I find it very important to, while acknowledging AIPAC, also putting it even more front and center, the Association of Realtors, because those same people are the reason why Americans are suffering directly. There's a direct pipeline between the suffering of Palestinians and Americans when it comes to real estate. It's why you can't afford a home. It's why till the day you die, you will never be able to put down that down payment. Same fucking people. And that's why I believe that AIPAC has been a sacrificial lamb, because while they are influential, they're there to kind of mask and be a human shield for the bigger lobbying company that they're actually trying to hide the public from. Because then it would be like a direct connection for American citizens. Like they would actually feel for the Palestinians and understand that their fight is also our fight. So anyways, just throwing that out there.
So this works like in a person to person way. If I was like, I'm one of the real estate association lobbyists, and I go, all right, Mark, you're a member of Congress. I'm going to give you a very important stock tip that like this development company is about to get a contract to redevelop Gaza. You want to buy now? And then you go off and buy, right? It's kind of like an understanding and an agreement, a regular insider trading business relationship.
100%. And I'm also going to vote to send more weapons to Israel to bomb more Palestinians. It's going to incentivize me. Be like, if I vote for more bombs to go to kill Palestinians, then I'm contributing to the ethnic cleansing, and therefore it's going to make my utopian vision of reaping that stock dividend when that company actually gets the official UN approved contract. And that's what I'm trying to tell people is like the UN right now is the arbitrator for big business, for development, under the guise of the prosperity and future of the Palestinian people. So, you know, that's kind of like the crux of all this. And that's why it's been so frustrating to watch these statements from the United Nations, and then people like liberals in the United States, like celebrating, like, look, finally we got some international justice and there's talks about peace. It's so sick. It's so sociopathic to just like witness probably over 650,000 people dead and then just be like, well, finally it's going to be over, guys. And we're going to see that place flourish with brand new hotels. And it goes back to like, it's always been the selling point of Israel to the American public is the modernity. And that's what's been frustrating for me is like Israel sells itself as being the civilized nation because their buildings are modern. They have modern technology. Like look at the modern architecture. Look at the modern, you know, liberal ways of life. We have modern nightclubs. We have gay nightclubs. We got lesbian nightclubs. Look at everything that we got. We're so modern, and that has sold the world on ethnic cleansing and genocide and branding the Palestinians as being backwards. So, I'm sorry about the chaotic nature of this particular episode, especially meeting you under these circumstances. You know,
this has been great.
Okay,
that's
good.
a horrible word to use considering what the acronym means now. This has been fantastic, Mark.
Yeah.
We just about. Wait, how does we're talking about investment companies, but how does the Saudis buying electronic arts fit into this? I know I just made this more chaotic, but I'm just confused. I understand in the long-term strategic game is okay. Dubai is a money sink. We can't just keep investing into fossil fuels. But how does buying media companies factor into buying real estate? Am I just not an investor? Should I have picked up an econ degree? I just don't get it.
I think it's just money.
Yeah.
Just money. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's just where the money is. Yeah. I mean, you also want to control information, right? You want to push a narrative that's convenient for the development of land on Gaza and renter capitalism everywhere.
Yeah, and diversifying really portfolio.
That too. I think it's just a betrayal of international intelligence to think you can just build hotels on the graves of people. There's no, like I said before, there's no precedent to do that. Yes, before Native American burial grounds, I don't think most people just didn't read, but a lot of people watch TV. A lot of people watch short clips of just kids picking up what they think is food, and it ends up being a small fire grenade. Like, people have seen videos of this. Like, we've never been a point in human history where people have just so much visual information of what's going on. So to think to question the intelligence of an international audience of like, yeah, we're just going to build hotels here. I don't think we're that far into Black Mirror, guys. Like, there's famous movies about, building things on Native American burial grounds, and now they're trying to do that in real life. It's a no-go for me, mister. Like,
yeah, we're way beyond Black Mirror. I think Black Mirror is probably frustrated because they don't know what new content to put out. That's why I think they've been kind of like silent lately. Is
he new here?
Yeah, I mean, if we'll try to post this plan, this great trust plan, maybe to the audience on our website and the resource repository page. But it's insane. Like this, like it is so dystopian. And it's
It originally leaked like in early September. Yeah, it's like just a rumored plan in the White House. They were bouncing it around. Yeah.
But this is the investment package. This is what they tell investors. This is how you sell them on genocide, of supporting a genocide. So and even if they renege on it and they said, oh no, it's just, it was just a thought, just a plan, but it doesn't matter because internally, like, all the investors on Wall Street know what the end game is, which is why one of the tactics I was thinking about that we could like at least try to use is some psyop is we should spread a rumor in the elite Wall Street circles that they lied about the gas off of Gaza. It was actually it's actually a lie. There's no gas off of the coast of Gaza, and then just start that rumor and just have it go around Wall Street, and everybody's like, what? And then just pull their investments and everything just collapse and implodes. I don't know. It was a silly idea, but it goes along the point is that like all of this is being hyped up in Wall Street like crazy right now. Like, while all of us are in shock and horror of what's happening to the Palestinian people in Wall Street are like calling each other and just talking about the next yacht they're about to buy out of this after this payout, And I think as far as actions, because I'm trying to make a tradition on Colonial Outcast, and instead of just giving everybody the bad news, we actually give them a call to action to work with, so they can feel like they have power, because we do have power. I think that the Italian dock workers set a very important precedent of what we can do. And that's just Italy. That's just Italian dock workers. Imagine what all of us could do, So I think that is the answer. I think that should be our response. And a lot of people have been calling this out. People who belong to unions are saying that, listen, if we can do, this goes in two parts. People like you, Jessica, people like you, Molombo, doing the research that y'all do and finding the key players, investigating which companies are behind this and which companies they work with, which subcontractors do they work with, what material supply companies do they work with. We provide that list to the public and we say, okay, here's your target list. Here's who we need to boycott. Here's who we need to encourage other people to just do economic sabotage, where we're not going to work with that. We are going to block their shipments. We are not going to be responsible for building high-rise luxury hotels in Gaza. We're not doing anything unless it goes directly to the people of Gaza. So I think there's a lot there. I'm not smart enough to figure out the direct actions, but I think that collectively with our intelligence, we can put together a plan and emulate what the Italian dock workers did and put that on an international scale. I think it's possible.
Yeah. And I think like we need to remind our viewers always to have the discipline of like, the algorithm is not going to push this content. All of the social media algorithms are just not pushing anything Israel, Gaza, and punishing accounts that publish on it. So like, it needs to be using our organizing skills that we had before the internet, when we were like knocking doors and meeting people in community buildings, of like, hey, check my page at this time every single Tuesday. I'm going to be posting the latest updates of like what businesses we know are involved. Like, it's going to need to be a disciplined organizing effort to report on this.
Absolutely.
But I'm down. I'm game. I think it's a good idea, Mark.
I think it presents a great. I think one thing about this younger generation, they love a challenge. They love a complex challenge. It's just in their blood. Like you see these, especially Gen Z, they love complexities. They like those little intricate games that we can play. Again, I've been making this point. We have to make revolution fun, or else it's just shoved in the category of activism. It has to be a way of life, and that includes making a game out of it. So let's have a friendly competition, guys. Who can find out which company, who can find out the most companies who are involved in this? Who can really do it? I'm all about it, man. Let's use the tools that capitalism used to get us on board with this bullshit, and let's weaponize it towards the other way. You know?
Yeah,
I love it.
Well, this was a great, short and sweet episode. Sorry about the chaos, shoving you guys in the room, and then Greg's fucking camera wigging out, and the Mossad hacking the communication signals, and then him getting closer to Gaza. I have to deal with my stress somehow, guys. I got to deal with my anxiety. He's fucking driving me insane. So y'all have helped with that.
Good.
Yeah. So
I can't even imagine.
any last words? I'll give you all the last words on this.
Jessica, go first. You got this. You got bars. Jessica's got bars.
All right, let's hope this flotilla gets there safely. Let's hope this is one of those situations where it doesn't end in absolute catastrophe. I think everyone's worried. We've got North Korea on our side saying if anything happens to the flotilla, there's going to be consequences. So shout out to you, Kim. And I think like I was listening to what's her name, Carsey. She's on the flotilla. She's a musician, and she made a song about like keeping the eternal flame alive. And I think that that's what we should see the flotilla as, in like our job every single day, is like, it doesn't need to be an absolute resolution of the world's problems every day. And I think anyone who feels the pain of the world kind of feels the weight on their shoulders that they have to be a part of the solution every single day. You don't. Like, our job is just to keep the flame alive. And so that's what we should all hold ourselves accountable to doing, and nothing more.
Echoing everything Jessica said. Amazing. Yeah, no, also all solidarity to the flotilla, all solidarity to the Palestinian people, all solidarity to all marginalized and oppressed groups around the world. All solidarity to Big Daddy Kim Jong-un. And but yeah, no, this is what we do. We have these conversations, we bring awareness, and just like, and I hope and pray for more direct actions like the flotilla. And I hope they have a safe passage, and Israel doesn't, keep acting like Israel. Better angels will win out in the end.
100%. Thank you guys so much for coming on. Y'all have been
Thanks
great. I appreciate all the effort you do in educating people on your own platforms. With that being said, everybody follow the Smooth Flotilla, and all power to the people.